Let's be real. We are swimming in political language every single day. Some of it's great, some of it, not so great. But how do you actually tell the difference? How do you break down what's being said, like scientifically, without getting totally lost in the noise or your own gut reaction? Well, that is exactly what we are going to do today. We're going to build a toolkit together, one that helps you dissect dangerous rhetoric and see the mechanics behind the manipulation.
You know that feeling, right? You hear a politician say something, and this little alarm bell starts ringing in your head. It sounds familiar, maybe even a little too familiar from history. But just as you start to connect the dots, you stop yourself, because making a direct comparison feels like a huge leap, maybe even irresponsible. So how do we analyze what's really happening, accurately, without falling into that trap? That is the central question we're going to tackle. All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll talk about a really common and dangerous mistake people make. From there, we'll lay down the essential ground rules for doing this kind of analysis right. Then comes the good stuff. I'll give you a simple 4-step method you can use on anything. We'll even apply it to a real-world example so you can see it in action. And to wrap it all up, we'll look at some tools you can use to defend our democratic conversations. Okay, let's just get this out of the way. The first thing we absolutely have to understand is that making a simple equation like this person is the new that person is a massive analytical mistake. It's not just lazy, it's actually dangerous. It flattens really complex history. It trivializes real suffering. And honestly, it can even make it easier for people to dismiss valid criticism because the comparison just seems way over the top.
So, here's the crucial shift in thinking we need to make. Our goal here is not to prove that two individuals are identical. That's a total dead end. The real goal is to become a kind of language mechanic. We want to pop the hood on a speech and identify the specific tools being used, things like scapegoating or dehumanization, and figure out how they work no matter who's in the driver's seat. So, to do this kind of work properly, we need a really solid foundation. And these aren't just, friendly suggestions. They are absolutely essential rules for the road. Without them, our own analysis can end up becoming just as messy and biased as the rhetoric we're trying to pick apart. This right here is probably the most important rule of them all. On one side, you've got everything we have to avoid. Don't get bogged down in personal histories. Don't make those direct equals claims. And stop focusing on the person. Instead, we are going to focus entirely on the mechanism. So the question is never, are these two people the same? The question is this a textbook example of a scapegoating tactic? See the difference? It changes everything. And of course, an analysis is only as good as its data. Your source hygiene has to be perfect. That means you always try to find the primary source, the original text, the full speech. For anything recent, you stick to reliable news outlets. And here is the golden rule for our era. If you only see a quote in a meme or a social media graphic, just don't use it. Assume it's fake or stripped of all context. A bad source will poison your entire analysis from the start. Okay, ready for the main event? We have laid all the groundwork, and now it is time for the toolkit itself. I'm about to give you a simple, repeatable 4-step process that you can use to dissect any piece of communication you come across. This is the moment we go from being passive listeners to active analysts. We're calling it the ABCD method. Nice and easy to remember. A is for description. That's just what was actually said. Get the exact quote, the date, and the context. B is for mechanism. This is the how. How is the language working? Are there metaphors, specific grammar tricks? C is for function. So why was it said? What is this language designed to do? Is it meant to create fear, to attack an institution? And finally, D is the democratic check. This is the so what. What fundamental democratic value is being threatened here? Human dignity? Freedom of the press? Okay, theory is great, but it's not much use until you see it in action, right? So let's take a real, well-documented example from recent political history and run it through our brand new ABCD toolkit. So here is our example, the statement that labels the news media as the enemy of the American people. Now that is a really powerful and historically loaded phrase. It's designed to hit you right in the gut and get a strong emotional reaction. So our job is to take a step back from that reaction and just analyze it. And look at how beautifully this breaks it down. Step A, description. That's just the quote itself. Step B, mechanism. Notice the powerful war metaphor, enemy, that frames journalism as a battle. It also lumps all journalists into one group and pits them against another big group, the people. Step C, function. The purpose here seems pretty clear. It's to delegitimize an entire institution and create a very sharp us versus them mindset. And finally, step D, the democratic check. Well, this rhetoric takes direct aim at freedom of the press, a core pillar of democracy. See? No name-calling, no getting emotional, just a clean, systematic analysis. So, understanding the problem is the first step, but it can't be the last. The big question is, what do you do with this analysis? How do we turn this insight into something constructive? This is where we shift gears from being an analyst to being an active defender of healthy public debate. Here are 3 simple, practical things you can actually say in a conversation. First, you can just name the mechanism out loud. Hang on, that sounds like dehumanization. Let's talk about people as people. Second, you can demand evidence. That's a pretty big claim. What's a specific source that proves that? Or third, you can push back on a huge generalization. Okay, that's one example, but is it really a trend? What does the data show? These aren't about winning an argument. They're about reintroducing reason and critical thinking into the conversation. You know, this whole method that we've been talking about, it actually has a name. It's called pre-bunking, and it's kind of like a vaccine for misinformation. Think about it. If you know how a magic trick works before you see it, you're not going to be fooled. It's the same thing with rhetoric. When you understand the manipulative tactic ahead of time, you see it for what it is, a trick, instead of getting swept up in the emotion of it all. And that really brings us to the core takeaway here. This is not just some neat academic exercise. When you conduct a clean scientific analysis of rhetoric, you are doing something incredibly powerful. It's a form of anti-racism because it exposes the very tools used to devalue other human beings. And it is a fundamental defense of democracy. By learning to do this, you're not just becoming a more informed citizen, you're becoming a more effective one. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. Language always sets the stage. It's what creates permissions and lowers barriers for what comes next. So as you move through the world, listening and reading, always be asking yourself this question. What words are being used right now to make the unthinkable suddenly seem thinkable? And more importantly, what are you going to do about it?